Okay. So one thing to keep in mind is that I'm using my own email and Slack and stuff to do this. So this is confidential training. You can't share it anywhere because who knows what's going to show up in my Slack or email while we're all talking. Could be some email from, I don't know. But I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. So this is a list of random things that I like to use and use pretty much every day to kind of help me get my job done. And these are all shortcuts and things. And just one thing to keep in mind is I start not nerdy and then get increasingly nerdy as we go. So, just kind of be aware of where this, kind of how this will go over time. The first few tips are sort of in the list of you should really do these if you can. And you can see I'm still editing this as we go. The first few are definitely in the category of, you should be doing these. There's no way you shouldn't be. And I just want to make sure that you know these particular ones. Also, if there's any software licenses or anything you need based on this training, just tell me, and I'll make sure that you get them. Actually, tell Chad, and he'll make sure that you get them. And it'll happen much faster than if you tell me. So the other thing is that all these tools together, some of you heard me give this spiel, but all these tools together save me about 15 hours a month. For real. And I've timed it. I have actually timed how long it takes. And you'll see that the first couple tools, and several of these tools, are all about not using my mouse. Some of them are all about taking 5 things I have to do, turning them into one. And at least one of them is about just getting stuff out of my head as quickly as humanly possible, but making sure I'm not going to forget to do it. And those are sort of the 3 big categories: is faster use. Okay, there.
I wasn't laughing.
Faster use of the computer, freeing myself up from distractions, and smoothing workflows as much as I can. So those are the big 3. So first thing is Alfred. How many of you have Alfred on your computer, or Launchy if you're on Windows? Nobody? Okay. And it's not named after my dog. So Alfred is this thing. It's a what would you call it? I guess a keyboard launcher. And with it, you can set up a keystroke. On my Mac, it's Option Space. And now I can do stuff. So I can start a piece of software, right? So I can start Google Chrome. And that will just start Google Chrome. And notice my hands did not have to go anywhere, right? So there's no clicking, there's no looking for stuff. But I can also set up keywords. So, for example, entering in my hours, right, is a pain in the butt because I can never remember the URL. Or if I want to go to teamwork, no, that's not one because I haven't created it yet. Or if I want to look at my leads on HubSpot, those are long, complicated URLs I don't want to have to memorize. So instead, I set them up in Alfred. And the way you do that, and you can do this in Launchy as well, assuming I can find the Alfred, the little happy Alfred hat, there we go, is I can just go into preferences, and you can turn almost anything into a set of links. You can turn almost anything into a set of keystrokes. So for example here, these are custom workflows I've set up, but also, there we go, under web search, I can set up anything I want. So for example, my ClearLink sign-in is ridiculously complicated. So I just created something called ClearLink sign-in. And if I type it in, it goes to this address. It just took me a few seconds to do that, but now, no bookmark, no nothing. I just type that in and I'm good to go. I can manage windows on my screen. So I can use this special plugin called Div. And I'm extremely obsessive about how I do this stuff. So for me, this is, I know this probably seems ridiculous and vaguely pathological for you all, but for me, having that level of management of windows is really, really important.
That's what I've been missing on my Mac coming from Windows.
Mm-hmm. Is being able to organize windows. Yeah, absolutely. But for me,
this is only a Mac product.
Well, yeah, but there's another one called Launchy for Windows.
Same thing.
Mm-hmm. does very similar stuff. And also, Windows actually has a keyboard shortcut manager of its own. So you can actually just create your own keyboard shortcuts right in Windows in the control panel. So you can do the same thing. Alfred Launcher is, because on the Mac it's a little bit more opaque. And of course it's a Mac, so it has to have all these cool, sexy things attached to it. Otherwise, why have a Mac? Other things you can do, and this is the paid license that lets me do all this stuff, so just keep that in mind. But I can, for example, create a new file. I can create a new Markdown file, because you know how much I love to write Markdown. And then it's just going to ask me where I want to put it. And then I can just pick where I want to put it. So it could be, oops. And notice it does folders as keywords as well. Like, I didn't have to type in the full. I didn't have to type in the full address, the full directory path. And in fact, that'll show you how you can open stuff. So I have a folder on here called Core Portent Sales. That's just the folder on my computer, and I can just jump to that folder instantly using Alfred, and this you can definitely do in Launchy. I have a templates project, and I can jump to that, right? So you don't have to do any of this using click navigation. The other thing you can do is you can open things using specific programs. So for example, here, I have this whole section on my computer called My Brain, and this is what I use instead of Evernote now. It's just a collection of text files and folders, and I open it using Atom because that has this really cool project folder management. So I can just open an entire folder. I can open an entire file. So for example here, see, I can say what I want to open it with. So again, just one less thing you have to do. You don't have to right click on a file to figure out how you're going to open it. Questions so far? So you can also do a quick calendar. This I don't think Launchy will do. But you can just type in cal and you can get a quick look at dates and times for things, which is always kind of helpful for me. But I also created a keyword shortcut that just lets me jump directly to my calendar. So that's Alfred or Launchy, and that literally saves me about a half an hour a day.
How long would it take somebody who's kind of attached to their mouse to get used to it? Imagine it could be kind of life-changing, traveling or on a plane. Or...
I mean, a lot of this, and you'll see as I go through this, a lot of this was me just sitting there doing something and then realizing, wait a minute, there's got to be a better way to do this. So
slowly adding.
Yeah, so install Launchy, start using it, get used to it, and then if you start finding things that you just want to stop doing, that's a good place to kind of start. And all the tools you're going to see here, everything, every instance of it was me looking at something and saying, I don't want to have to do this anymore. There's got to be a better way to do this.
It's the first time I've actually heard someone use the infomercial. There's got to be a better way.
Okay, yes, that's fair. That's fair.
So is this?
That is Launchy.
Launchy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the big thing about Alfred is that there's all these plugins that you can add to it. I believe Launchy is completely free, but there may be a paid version that lets you add plugins to it as well, just like Alfred. So the other thing that I use a lot is Text Expander, and this is the other one that lets me stop retyping things and doing things that I would otherwise have to type. So for example, Text Expander, and this is available for Windows and Mac. Text Expander lets me take any snippet of text and create a shortcut. So for example, one of the easiest ones is I always have to do smart quotes, right, when I'm writing something. So I can remember to type &RSQUO whatever, right? Or I can just do that. So I type period RSQ, and it just immediately expands when I hit tab to be the full, why am I having so much trouble speaking today? The full entity itself. You can also, like I send out an email to folks when they download my my tech SEO guide, and there's a certain standard subject line I use, so that's just T-sub, and then there's also an email message that I send. And with Text Expander, you can actually put in placeholders. So here's the whole email with a placeholder for my name. And I always rewrite these, but this way I've got the basic content in there every single time. I use this for...
This doesn't matter where you're typing, right?
Correct. Anything that lets you type can use this. And let me see here. So HTML, there's tons of things you can do, but then I have all these.
Ian snippets.
Wow.
Yes, Ian snippets. That's right. So for example, my direct line, which I can never remember, and my direct speakerphone, which I just added to my office. So I have those now memorized. And by the way, this is up on Dropbox, so I can use it on any computer where I can log into to Text Expander. I can, let's see here, what else do I have here? My TSA pre-number, which I can never remember. My standard email signature, just phrases like digital marketing that I just have to type in so often that I get sick of it. Google Webmaster Tools, Google Insights, the word canonicalization, which my fingers twist over each other every time I try to type it. Oh, I love this one. Oops. So it'll just do a lorem ipsum for me. I don't know why Siri just came up. I must have poked the button by accident. Siri has nothing to do with any of this. Siri can just stay out of it.
She's listening.
Always. So I also have things like, Portent's old address. I have, starting MySQL, just commands that I can never remember. There's a command to start a small web server on the Mac and in Linux. I can never remember it, so there it is. It's just .psh for me.
Do you have a strategy for creating the shortcuts you type?
So there's a few strategies. Text Expander can actually suggest snippets to you if you want it to. So that can be pretty helpful. I start with things I can't remember. I start by using this as my memory because I forget things all the time. Then I start using it for shortcuts and quicker typing. So like, Portent's mailing address, for teamwork addresses, right? Who the hell's going to remember those addresses? So instead, I just have them here. And if I type these in, it expands to include them.
One of your private snippets has your old address.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It's so I don't forget the old address because I get a lot of it. And in fact, I need to add another one for the ClearLink billing address since everything I do now uses that address. There's my Zoom.
This is a sentence I'm going to type.
Yeah, pretty much that's, yes, I think I have that. Yes, there we go. It's my demonstrator.
Is that a social security number or something?
Where?
I assume you don't want
No.
anything.
No, that is not. That is my Zoom account ID. You do not want to put anything secure in here. Use a tool like 1Password for secure stuff, clearly, because this does not encrypt as far as I know. When I did, let's see here. When I did the stuff with shutting down JewWatch, I had a standard email that I sent to a lot of folks, and I had that in here. And then I had a standard email that I had everybody I contacted send, so I had that in there too. So those are all examples of things you can do with Text Expander. Next to Alfred, it is the biggest time saver I've got. And it would probably be even bigger if I was a little more disciplined in how I use it, but I'm not. So, other things you can do, and there's some stuff in here that I haven't even touched. You can add all manner of things like dates, times.
You set it to give the current date. How does that?
Yeah, so you can just tell it, put in. Here we go. You can just break it up and tell it to put in the current date and time right here. You can.
Right, that's what I'm thinking for sure. They set the log.
Yeah, you could just have today, for example. You can enter special characters. You can have it use the clipboard. Oh, in fact, by the way, you can also have Alfred. It has a great clipboard viewer. So now everything I put in, and I believe Launchy again does the same thing. So everything I've put in my clipboard for a while. Be careful with that, because if you put in too much stuff, it starts to eat up memory on your computer.
That was my other question. Do these take up any memory?
I haven't found them to do very much. Text Expander should be the most resource intensive one because it's always there running. I just haven't seen it do that much. You can place the cursor in whatever you type. So for example, when I'm doing HTML, I can cut and paste. I copy a URL to the clipboard and then I do (A). It immediately turns that into my link and puts the cursor there so I can start typing my link text. Yeah, no, this is some serious stuff. I mean, you can do just about anything you could think of. The reason I haven't totally exploited is, again, ironically, I forget everything. So if I start doing too much stuff with it, I'll just forget what it can do, and then it'll be completely pointless to me. Helpful so far?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And that's just called Text
I love this.
Expander.
Yeah.
And it's standard for both.
Text Expander runs on both the Mac and the PC. There's also a bunch of other tools that do similar things. A lot of people got angry when Text Expander, they basically have this cloud feature now, so you can store all your stuff up on Text Expander. A lot of people didn't like that. I think it's awesome. I'm perfectly happy with it. You'll probably get triggered by that one. Institutional Investor, that was when we were working with Russell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Client names I have trouble typing.
Mhm,
would be a good
mhm.
one.
Canonicalization was the worst one for me. That saved me some serious pain.
So your workaround to the online is to put it in Dropbox, the
Mm.
file basically.
I used to.
Okay.
I do that for Alfred.
Okay.
You don't have to do it for Text Expander anymore because Text Expander has their own,
Okay.
cloud thing. The one thing I will do is I use 1Password for security. That I put up on Dropbox. That way I can access it from my phone, from all my different computers and everything. And because it's encrypted, someone could hack it, I guess. But if they did, what are they really going to do with it? It's going to be complete garbage when they get to it. Some really good Slack tricks. So Slack is by far my favorite. See, forgetting things. So actually, here's the first thing in Slack. So you get a quick message and you want to remember to act on it later. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but if you click the 3 dots next to the message, you can have it remind you. So I'm going to have this remind me in 1 hour. And when it does, it'll just show up in my Portent in account right here. Okay? Just getting stuff out of my head, just on the fly, just really quickly. Otherwise, messages can go by so quickly you don't really remember them. Threading. Have any of you worked with threading in Slack?
I saw you work with it.
Yeah. It's just kind of an etiquette thing. If you're in a really big thread like general and you want to answer somebody, but you don't think it's something everyone's going to want to see, you can make it a threaded discussion instead. Does a couple things. It is kind of good etiquette, but also then it gets saved up here in threads so that you can get at it.
Do you start a thread on somebody else's comment, or do you have to only? Or
You can start it on someone else's.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you reply to someone, that's generally when you would do it. See, so here Andy posted something just as an experiment. I did that right there. You can set it up to sort channels scientifically. So far I'm not loving it, but what it'll basically do is just literally put the channels you use the most at the top.
Is that a setting?
Yeah, so
You
it's
can
in
also
the,
start them too.
yes, you can also star channels. So let's see here. Is it here?
No, I thought I saw it on when you clicked on channels. There was a sort.
Oh yeah, there we go. Well, except that's not the scientifically option. So I'll look it up and I'll send it to you. Or you can use the Googles and find it that way. So, you can sort scientifically. I have not loved that too terribly. And then there's all sorts of cool integrations. So one that I use, for example, is I use the Twitter monitor integration so that I can track certain people on Twitter, and instead of having to go to Twitter and chase down what they're saying and where, I just have them, their tweets show up in Slack.
I played around with that. Make sure if you do that you uncheck the include replies.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So we get
Yeah.
really busy.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on what you're trying to do, but generally you do not want to track
Right.
replies. And these are all apps. These are all integrations in Slack, and there are so many of them. But wow, that's what happens when your fingers are one to the right. So here's Twitter. You can just configure this for your workspace, and you can just add more and more integrations to it, so you can get more and more different tweets and Twitter accounts coming in. I actually custom wrote my own with Zapier that does more elaborate searches and things. You don't need it. That monitor works fine. I also wrote one custom in Zapier that grabs stuff from Reddit just so I can see those messages. Again, it's that sense that, I don't like having to go and pull stuff in from a million different places. If I can put it all in Slack and watch it there, why would I pull it in from have to navigate around? You can pull RSS feeds into Slack. So if you have a site you're watching, we already get GitHub updates on Slack. So if people change things, and then Kyle just abandons us, you can just get GitHub updates right here in Slack. I use a couple others. I use the poll plugin. When you see me doing those polls and stuff, that's what I'm using for that. What else do I have on here? Bitmoji, that's a very important one. TomatoBot is a Pomodoro timer if you use Pomodoro a lot. There's just, Peach, also very, very important. But you can place stuff in here, and you can integrate Slack into your workflows, and it just makes it much, much quicker.
What was your Nintex one?
Nintex Workflow Cloud has a Slack integration.
Oh, you tested it out?
Yeah. I mean, I don't honestly know if it works or not, but so that's it for Slack. Questions about Slack? So Gmail. Here's the cool thing about Gmail. If you put in a question mark, if you type a question mark while in the Gmail window, it will show you all the keyboard shortcuts for Gmail. And the ones I use the most, here I'm going to switch to spam. Pickle making byproduct. Got to look at that one. Pickle barrels. You can get pickle barrels. Sorry, I get sidetracked by great spam. So J lets you move down. K moves you up. X checks a message. E will archive. I'm not going to archive spam messages. And then hash deletes. If you're viewing the message itself, it's the same thing. You're just going to see each message. And then if you want to move back up and see the list of messages, hit U and you move up. O, by the way, is how I open these messages. R lets you reply, at which point you're stuck because you're replying and you're in a window.
You said J.
J is up. Sorry, J is down, K is up. So J is older messages, K is newer messages.
I'm not doing that work at all.
You might have to turn on.
You have to turn on keyboard shortcuts. Sorry.
Got it, there you go.
Yeah, you have to turn them on in your settings.
And that's only when you're in the list view, right? Not when you're in an email.
Well, if you're in an email, then the keyboard shortcuts do the same thing, but you navigate from one to the next, message by message, instead of going through the list itself.
And I assume it stops when you're actually writing a message. Or else you
Yes.
can't change
Yes.
it.
Yeah. No, it does not. Yeah. That would be problematic. Yeah. No, it definitely does that. And then C composes a new message. And in fact, you can see another text expander thing here. So remembering the string to CC stuff into HubSpot is always hard. So I just have hub BCC, and then it gives me that message.
That might also be useful for our, because in Teamwork you have emails for all your projects that you can put in the Messenger. So whenever you're writing an email, just in the BCC, you can use text exchange.
You mean like this?
Yeah.
Oh crap! It didn't work. Hold on. I'm gonna find it. There we go.
Sort of related. Should we be changing our emails to say Portent is now a Clearlink company too?
You should at least have it say Portent and Clearlink Agency. Chad sent something around about this
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, so you can take a look at that. Yeah, definitely. Just a quick side thing is we also should not be referring to like Portent and Clearlink when we're talking to amongst ourselves or to Clearlink. It's really agency and performance, or Salt Lake City and Seattle, just to get us used to it. So yes, Teamwork emails you can definitely put into Text Expander as well. Have any of you worked with the Google site search operator? So if I'm trying to search someone's site, there's lots of ways you can do it, but I often find that site search tools are pretty crappy, like on, say, Facebook. And if I want to search Facebook for every mention of me, one easy way to do it is to just do site : and then the web address itself. One reason I like to use this is if I'm trying to figure out the most relevant page on a site for a particular term. So, nintex.com. I want to see what page Google thinks is the most relevant for the word workflow on Nintex. There you go. Just a quick shorthand tool for doing that kind of search. Again, big time saver. To-do.txt, I honestly don't know if you want to learn too much about this, but this is my obsession with text files. This is a text-based to-do management tool. So instead of using Evernote or whatever, I have this script, and you go to todotxt.org, and it uses a plain old text file to manage all of your to-dos. And there's all sorts of different ways to do it. There's visual editors, there's gadgets, there's the command line tool for it, and it lets me tag stuff. So for example, I just want to see all my to-dos before I leave for New York. Right? So this is all the stuff I have to do before I leave for New York here. And it prioritizes for you. Now, I edit this a lot just in my regular text editor, but I also can sync this file using Dropbox to all my other devices. So again, I can see this on my phone, I can see this on other computers, wherever I need to. So check out todotxt.org. If you don't already have a tool you like to use for to-dos, I like to use this because it's a very raw to-do list. It's not sending me reminders or anything like that. I do have a system to it. So if I have, say, an email that attaches to something, I'll actually put the email into a separate folder, 001. And if you read a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen, it'll talk about this. And again, it's all about emptying your head. So when I get an email that I really need to remember to work on, and it's going to be a while, I put it into my to-do, I put the reminder in my to-do list, and then I save the email, and I just tag it here. That way I know, okay, I got to pack headphones, it has something to do with this email, this way I'll remember later to go look at it. Just, and he literally has people doing it with folders and paper and stuff, so they'll, you get an email, you print it, you put it in a folder. I personally refuse to do that, so there's something very wrong about it. And then if you want to complete something, so you can add something, right? And then it just added it there. Now I can do tdo 33, and what it's doing as I do this is it's saving an archive of all these and tracking everything I've completed. So I can always look back at my done list and all that and check through that. Again, this is a little bit nerdier. I've just found it to be kind of helpful for very simple, very fast to do tracking. I mean, you saw how quick it was, right? I didn't have to open Outlook. I didn't have to do anything else. All right. Now we get really interesting. So sometimes when anybody in this room is working with a website, there's certain basic things you have to figure out. For example, you're looking at a site and you want to figure out why something weird is happening when you visit it, like you're being redirected or something. So there's this command called curl. And what curl does, and on Windows, I think you actually have to download it and install it, but what curl does is it downloads the contents of a URL without a browser. So actually, better example, say you've got a website and you're afraid it's been hacked. So opening the website could infect your computer with something. Instead of going to the website, opening it in your browser and hoping for the best, you can actually download the raw website, right? And this is a redirect, so this is what you see. And I just grabbed the entire site. I'm not saying you want to do this all the time. I'm just saying.
Page or site?
I'm sorry?
Page or site?
That's the page. Sorry,
Oh, gotcha.
downloads the entire page, yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. There is a command for that, but I'm not going to go there. You can also use curl to grab certain very specific things. And again, you don't have to memorize this. Just remember that there is another way to do this stuff. You don't have to get stuck, checking by hand or finding a tool online. So say you want to know whether a server is using the right response codes, because we bug clients about this all the time. Curl-I just gives you the headers from the server. This is also how a lot of the time if you hear me on the phone with a client, I'll say, oh yeah, you're running on Cloudflare with Nginx. Well, that's how I'm doing it. It's not some kind of weird psychic power. All I'm doing is using curl. So I have found this to be pretty useful in very specific situations. Again, getting pretty nerdy here. Tools I will use more often, and this is just a Mac thing, I believe, but so there's a command called find. This is a command line tool, and so you can find anything in a folder. It did nothing because I have no files with that name in them right now. But it lets you do all sorts of fun stuff. And, again, I'm just showing you that so you know it's there. There are times when that is far, far easier than here. Let's see. So let's say I want to find every single log file stored on my computer. That's what this just did with that simple find command. The reason you'd use this sometimes is if you're going through massive numbers of files, because this is a lot faster than using Windows Explorer or Spotlight on the Mac. Once you get there, and these are the commands you really might use occasionally, or at least more often. So let's see, I want to go to, let's say I'm going to go look at the Nintex log files. So I'm going to go, actually there's an easier way to do that. And this is the other reason to sometimes use the find command, because now I can just cut and paste this and go straight to that directory, unless of course I do it wrong. There we go. So now I have this directory full of log files, right? And I just got there by typing in find, finding that folder, cutting and pasting, and then doing a CD, or on PC I guess it would be dir, I'm not sure. Now I've got all these massive files, and these are big files, right? Some of these can be, a gig or more. Instead of looking in a file one by one and, opening it in Notepad or something, you can use two commands, the head command, which will just show you the first, whatever lines, and you can use the tail command. That shows you the last however many lines of the file. So that just lets you quickly inspect a giant file, and this is where learning the command line can really help you, because if you're getting those gigantic files, there's no other way to do this in some kind of relatively clean manner. Now, the other thing you can do is you can put files together. So there's a command called cat, and that will show the whole file. It'll list the whole file out on, I may regret this, but it will list the whole file out in the command line. All right. If you have many files and you want to put them together, you can do cat star.log like that. So the double greater than sign is just saying, take the output of this and put it here. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking everything from that cat command, I'm going to put it into a single file. And that's what it just did. And you can see the relative file size. So now I've got that huge file. And again, you saw how fast that was, right? Compared to maybe cutting and pasting all these files into a text editor. So if you have a bunch of big CSV files, this would be a way to combine them really, really quickly. Or big text files or whatever else. And then I can, if I want to, use a command called grep to search this file for something. So let's say I want to find every mention of Googlebot in BigLog. That's what grep does. And again, you saw how fast that was, right? I mean, that was blindingly fast. And then if I want to, I can move all that into a separate file called Googlelog. So if you have a huge CSV file and you only need lines that mention a certain thing, or a huge spreadsheet and you only need lines that mention a certain thing, you could, in theory, use a grep command, go through that file, pull out only those lines, write them in another file, and then you've got a spreadsheet ready to go with just those lines in it. Okay, so these seem like really arcane, nerdy things to do, and they are, but every now and then there's a reason to use them, and just knowing it's possible can help you, because you can go and kind of figure it out, or you can come ask me. I love to work on this kind of stuff, or whatever. But now, if I do this, I have a log file that only has lines where Googlebot is doing something. And you can do that with any monster text file you want. Questions?
In Windows, same as.
So in Windows, you just have to install grep. And on the Mac, I believe you have to turn on Xcode, the developers tools. And you can look on the Apple site for how to do that. I think there's a bunch of different greps, actually. Windows. Yeah, there's a bunch of them out there. Grep for Windows is the one that I would usually use.
Okay.
And grep itself is a utility. So there's just lots of people who use it and get used to it and come up with new commands for it. So there's grep for Windows, grep for Linux. Linux comes with it built in, because really Linux users are the ones who would do this kind of bizarre stuff the most often. Another command, if you want to find out who owns a domain name, is whois, just one word. Type whois and then the domain. And that goes out to this big database that shows who owns, that basically records every domain, who owns it, and where the servers are hosted. So I just typed this in, and we actually use private domain registration. So I did whois www.portent.com, and you'll notice it does not have our name in it. And that is because we use private registration for the very reason that anyone can do this. And this is one way that spammers build giant databases. Like if I know that portent.com is in the database and it's reserved until, let's see here, when does it expire? Oh, see, we don't even have the expiration date in there. Damn, we're clever. but we can see this was created in 1985, right? Then we know that, something, this domain's been around a long time. Maybe we don't want to bother them about something, or maybe we do, I don't know. We can figure out what service is hosting it, which in this case is not terribly helpful because we're using Cloudflare, so it's just all these random servers. But so here's Nintex, right? And I just went in and I did a who is on Nintex, and we can see right away someone in Melbourne actually owns it.
Oh, that's where they're.
Oh, that's right. We can see that they're on Amazon Web Services because of the AWS, and figure out their DNS settings. So if I'm ever working with a client and they say, we don't even know where we're hosted, which is pretty common, then we can at least look in here and say, okay, you're registered through Amazon. It looks like you registered using a service called Gandhi.net. And it looks like you're hosted by this company here, so you might want to call them. This is how I figure that out. Questions about that? So it's just another little detective tool. And then the last thing is a plugin for Chrome called Scrapy. A lot of what I do involves taking lists of things from web pages. So like maybe I want the top 20 sites, the URLs of the top 20 sites that rank for a particular phrase. So I can pick, and this is actually an extension that you would download, and it's called Scraper or Scrapy, depending on which one, and it looks like a little paint scraper. Now if I right click on this, it says scrape similar, and it's going to pull every single piece of text that's related to that. And you have to kind of play with it and see what you should highlight. Like there, clearly I highlighted the wrong thing, but you can kind of mess around with it and see what you... For some strange reason, Google doesn't like it when you do this, so you can't always actually get this data. But here it worked pretty well. So there's only one where I got an ellipsis in the middle of the URL, so that's not going to work, obviously, as a link. But all the rest of these are good. So if I wanted to now pull every single one of these pages, I could copy these URLs, paste them into Helium, into RainGauge SEO, and then crawl every single one of those pages for the contents of the page.
What is it scraping? I'm sorry.
It's actually scraping the HTML element that contains this. So I'm trying to think of a better, here, let's do this. So it's scraping related elements. If I go onto this page, for example, I've got all these pictures and all this related stuff, and I want to get a list of these that I can paste somewhere. I can highlight this and do this. And what it's doing, and this is pretty slick, is it's actually looking in the HTML for similar HTML elements on the page, and it's going to try and scrape all of the HTML that uses the same pattern. So I just grabbed all these different products, all the HTML for all these different products. Okay, and it's using a command called XPath, by the way. So if you ever learn XPath, which I don't necessarily recommend if you're a sane person, but you can try different, you can mess with the XPath and try and grab different things on the page and do all this other fun stuff. Main thing is it's just a really easy way to scrape lots of data from a page. And note, by the way, that Matthew is the master of this. Like, he doesn't need Scrapy. He'll just sort of look at a page. He'll point RainGauge at a site, crawl it, and then give you a regular expression that'll pull all that data. So if you ever have a site with 50 pages of products and you need all the product data, crawl it and just have him get to work on it with a regular expression. He can totally do it. And that's it. That's all the tools that I had. Any other questions? Any things that you do every day that just suck up time?
the tool for that.
Mhm. Depends on what you need to send them. I use Boomerang a lot. And what I do is every 45 minutes, I go through my whole inbox, and if I can answer it in 2 minutes or less, I just do it. If it's something someone else can do, I forward it to them, and then if it's something that's going to take more than 2 minutes, I probably Boomerang it. And then every 3 hours, I have a longer period of time when I go through emails and answer them. Boomerang is fantastic if you haven't tried it.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that's all the weird little gadgets that probably makes sense right now. I have all these other ones like Buffer and Tag Viewer and Redirect Path and fun things like that. But
How often do you use Grep?
Grep, I probably use it once every couple days.
Okay.
It's because it has to be a file that's at least in the 500 meg or more.
Okay.
Because chances are my text editor can handle anything smaller than that. If someone gets me a log file, I reflexively use Grep. I'm always going to use Grep because log files are designed to be handled that way. And any plain text file that's more than a couple hundred meg, I'm probably going to use Grep on it. CSVs, it's got to be pretty big because Excel has really good utilities built into it. And again, if you need help with a very intricate grep command, I would say talk to Matthew because grep is actually a regular expressions search tool. So he can write regular expressions for you that you can then use in grep and pull out really precise little chunks of data. There's also a post somewhere on the Portent blog all about using grep on log files. So you can take a look at that by using a cite command on Google. Here, watch. There you go. 2010. Wow. Grep hasn't changed much. In fact, it hasn't changed at all. All right. I think that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you.